On today's episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities.
So I have to tell you, I went on the website. I learned how to tap. I'm tapping in my classroom. The kids are calming down. What? This is another example. Somebody who really needs something, and here's something really simple that helps.
Because I think of energy psychology, like when I describe it to people or I teach tapping, you can use it as a form of emotional first aid to just kind of calm your nervous system down. But with them, we can also use it in therapy to go deeper. Hi, everybody. Dr. Adriana Popescu here with you today with another episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, alternative perspectives on mental health. And I'm very excited to have with me today as my guest, Rachel Michaelsen. She, along with providing individual and group psychotherapy, is a clinical supervisor and consultant who specializes in energy psychology and sound healing. She is a certified diplomat in comprehensive energy psychology and has trained in several energy-based therapeutic modalities, including emotional freedom techniques, havening techniques, advanced integrative therapy, tapas acupuncture technique, Psych-K, and trauma tapping technique. Rachel has developed her own energy psychology protocol called Release Issues Past and Present, which she uses with individuals and in groups and teaches to other mental health providers. When working with clients, Rachel often integrates sound healing by utilizing calibrated tuning forks and chimes to facilitate change. Rachel also engages in training to a variety of mental health professions in all her areas of specialty. And she's also been a past chair of ACEP, our energy psychology organization. She has been on the humanitarian committee. So thank you so much for being here with us, Rachel.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. We always start off the show by wanting to get to know our guests better. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about you and how you came to be doing the work that you're doing today.
Great. Well, I am the daughter of a social worker. I was always interested in mental health issues, and I had my own issues, and I was in a lot of therapy. And it really wasn't until I found energy psychology that I really felt there was a really big shift. So I was sort of stuck in like a depressed cycle, and a bit of hopelessness around things like finding partnership and finding who I was and my way in the world. And I found energy psychology through an acupuncturist. And I started over 25 years ago going to conferences and training. And then I worked with an energy psychologist on my own issues for many years. And I just sort of jumped in and started using it with my clients. And my background was much more talk therapy, psychodynamic, what happened in your past, how does that create the present? But the talk has its limitations, which is what I was experiencing. And once I started adding the energy work, it was pretty powerful what happened. And so over time, I just studied and learned more and more techniques and started noticing, sort of riffing off what I learned. And when I was with clients trying different things and started to create something that worked, I got sort of accidentally by a client was telling me she was getting sound healing and it was really helping her anxiety. And then I happened to be at the energy psychology conference I was presenting, I don't even remember what that year. And I was at the faculty pre-meeting, and I was eating dinner across from a woman. I said, what's your thing? What are you here for? And she said, oh, sound healing. And I went, oh, that's interesting. So then I studied sound healing, and then the pandemic hit, and I went, oh, it's going to have to be online because because the sound healing is great when you're in the room with someone. So I figured out the technology and started doing free sound healings, which I still do on Monday nights. People come, we do tapping, we do other exercises, and then a half-hour sound bath. Pretty much every Monday night. I've been doing it now for like 6 years, and people can email me for the link to that. And you just pop in. You don't have to be on time. You don't have to have your camera on. It's really nice if you have earbuds or headphones on, and you get better quality. So I've been doing that, and then I was integrating sound into the work that I was doing. But I started, finding during the pandemic, the demand was so high, it's really good to do groups. So I was doing groups, and I presented at the ASAP conference, the Energy Psychology Conference, several years ago on a technique I had developed where you were connecting what was happening now, what was the issue now, to the original thing that happened that is being replayed and creating these emotions or behavior patterns that you don't like. And as I was doing that and I was studying other energy psychology stuff, I said, you know what, it would be really great to have a script for this, because I was teaching energy psychology to people. And they were having such a hard time with figuring out, when you tap, what do you say? So we're tapping on acupressure points on our face and our upper body. And then you're saying things, and people would get so stuck. And I'm like, well, with trauma, to me, it's really easy. We've got an issue. We've got an underlying root to that issue. If we had a script, then all people have to do is figure out the issue in the root, and is there a block to healing? And that was my thing. And so I sort of was looking around at other scripts, and I was looking around thinking about what I had learned in doing the work. And I came up with the script, and I've tweaked it. And I also say it's not set in stone. So when people use it, sometimes they get an intuition to do something a little different. I'm like, go for it, see the results. But for myself and other people, I found this script really helpful. And I have groups that I do it in. I do it with individual clients. I've done it with couples where they're both triggering each other, and what's the underlying trigger, and then we have them together clear the current battle that's going on in the underlying trigger that's being re-stimulated. So, and I mean, I can give you some examples, but I want to see if you have other questions now.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about, actually, I mean, we're going to give the audience a chance to actually get a taste for this script you've created, which I'm excited for. But I wanted to come back to sound healing for a moment, because I think in this day and age, most of us have heard of, sound baths, or, going to an event where you lie on the floor and you get cozy and someone's doing these, making different sounds with different instruments, and how powerful. Some of us that have had that experience know how powerful it can be. But I'm curious to actually hear more about your work with the tuning forks, and also like how you've integrated sound healing into therapy, because we don't, I don't think the general public hears about that as much.
Right. So, when I was training with people who were acupuncturists. So they're putting tuning forks on acupuncture points, right? Like that. And it will send the sound up the meridian that's in the body, and it changes. We're all vibrating, and some of the ways we're vibrating is not so great. It doesn't feel good. And depending on which fork, because I have numerous forks, you can see they're different colors. Some of them are all, where are they? Some of them are all just silver. Some of them are colored. So I've bought from different companies that do things differently, but they're different vibrations. And so they have different qualities of what they create for people. So what I've done is, I've thought, what is it that people need to do? And I also have, you can see the chimes behind me, and I have some bowls. And so then I'm looking at what are we talking about? And when I'm doing my particular technique I call release issues past and present, I'm thinking right now, like, are we releasing something? Are we changing a long held belief system or pattern? Is this about letting go? I tend not to use the tuning fork so much, because they then require a microphone, and it's like all this extra stuff versus this. But when I do the Monday night group, I pull out my microphone and do the whole thing. But the microphone picks up everything, including every airplane flying over me, every beautiful bird, the neighbors cutting their lawn. It picks up everything. So that's the thing about mics. But being able to bring in the sound around something. And sometimes I've had clients who just needed a little sound to calm down. Like if I could get them in their body. My favorite story is of a couple where she had a really horrendous sexual abuse history with her father. And he had a pretty kind of average childhood with probably like not a lot of emotional connection or learning how to be with emotions. But he was a pretty stable and pretty nurturing guy, and she would basically dissociate and project her father onto him. They come into a session. So I kept thinking, she would come into a session and she's like, he's been doing this to me and he's been doing that. And I'm thinking, maybe he's a really good actor, but I don't think that guy would ever do that. So I had her just listen to the tuning forks after she went on and on for 5 minutes, and I couldn't get her to stop. And I thought, this isn't what's really happening. So I had her listen to tuning forks, and literally she came out of it like when you see a deer come out of that freeze. She went, okay, well, what are we going to work on today? And she completely was unaware that she had done what she did. She just came back into her body. So sometimes when people are, I'll have someone come in and they're just talking my minute, and I can have to do all kinds of energy medicine practices, and that's actually, I want them to be able to do that. So I'll teach them heart breathing, and I'll teach them the balanced hookup. And the Energy Psychology Association has a website that's called Resources for Resilience. If you go to their website and look under resources, there are videos with all these exercises you can do to calm your nervous system down. And you can do that with sound, and it's really fast. And I taught classes to clients where they bought just the basic tuning forks and just are using them to stay balanced in their daily life. If you just listen to them, first thing in the morning and at bedtime, it can just recalibrate you through the day. But also, there's a specific thing, like something isn't moving, I might use the forks that tend to move things along and break up stuckness. So, um, so there's the fork can do that with these guys, and just getting people's nervous systems to calm down and getting them out of fight or flight. Then they can talk. I get people that are just going in circles, and I'm like, okay, a little more linearity of what we're talking about would be helpful.
Yeah. I wonder too about because I think of energy psychology, like when I describe it to people or I teach tapping, you can use it as a form of emotional first aid to just kind of calm your nervous system down. But then we can also use it in therapy to go deeper into maybe unresolved trauma or like deeply held limiting beliefs or whatever it might be. And so I'm curious, are you also using sound healing in that kind of way? Like when someone has, let's say, chronic unresolved trauma, PTSD, that type of thing?
So generally what I have done is I've integrated it into what we're doing an energy psychology protocol. So if we're doing release issues past and present, I will be hitting the bowls and the chimes while they're saying certain sentences. That's just the protocol that I use. I could be using tuning forks for specific issues, and I've done that in the past. It's just the issue of all the technology and getting the mic set up and the sound right, and and then if they don't have phones, they can't hear the tuning forks very well. So I do some treatment on people physically. I haven't been doing a lot of that. And when I do that, I might just do sound healing. I've done that with people. I've done a lot of work with people around like post-surgery swelling and inflammation and scar tissue. I had a friend who had a stray bullet go right through her window and right into her face and stop here. So she did lose her hearing, but it didn't go here. She didn't lose her life. She actually came in when the bullet was still in her body. But I just started working on her, and she just fell asleep. Like her just bringing down her cortisol level so she could rest. And then we went through her memory of the trauma while I held the forks and just helped her keep, because that's what tapping does. It brings down your cortisol level, and so do the forks. And so you can have someone talk about something and calm their cortisol level around it, so it isn't this thing that creates distress. It's not really complicated, actually. You got to have the equipment, and then if you're in the room with a client, then you're like, where am I? Would be when I was doing that, I was standing behind them often, and then it's a weird conversation. So I actually love doing it over Zoom, and that's a great way to work. You can just add the forks, or you can get chimes. Like this fork is the same as this chime here, the big chime, the sound. It's the same, and it's basically the ohm, which is the earth, which is the grounding, and that just doing that can be really, really powerful for people. So that's kind of
Fascinating.
yeah, it's actually really fun. And the other little, I call it the dirty little secret about energy work is I tap with my clients. It means I don't take on their stuff, and sometimes I even release my own stuff I didn't even know was there. Because we can have similar issues, and I'm holding the fork, I'm getting the benefit of the fork, or I'm listening to the chime. So I don't walk out of the end of the day like exhausted from hearing one trauma after another. I know that during the pandemic, so many people were flipped out about their own lives as therapists, and then hearing their clients. And I was energized because I was tapping and I was using sound.
Hmm. I
So
feel the same way. Yeah, I feel also just even being in the healing space, like itself, there's something about the that presence of that healing space that I get energized from it. I don't feel depleted
right,
afterwards. So, like, I think for because you work with training therapists and supervising and providing support for therapists, I think that oftentimes, they're especially traditional talk therapists, they don't have like somatic or energy based practices that they're necessarily using in session, but also for themselves, just to be able to, like you said, not take on other people's stuff, because most of us are highly sensitive, empathic folks who have that tendency.
well, I always think it's a little like flossing your teeth. You got to get the toxic energy out of your field at the end of the session or the end of the day, right? And so I kind of consider it an energy floss, which, because I don't need to carry around somebody else's distress. I need to show up for the next person ready to hold what they need. So,
Right. Now, before we get to your specific thing you've developed, I did want to ask you as well about this, because we talked a lot about tapping on the show. We've had some of our colleagues from ASAP on before, so I'm not going to go in depth with tapping or anything, but I know that you've been involved with some of the humanitarian work with ASAP, and I think tapping is the primary modality you guys are using when you're traveling to places like Africa and working with folks there. So can you tell me a little bit more about that work? Like, well, first of all, like what prompted you to want to do that type of work? And then what exactly are you doing when you're traveling internationally to all these different places and working with folks usually who've been highly traumatized, right?
right. So, well, one of the things is you want to bring simple things that people can remember because they're not always literate. They're not always going to read, right? I was in Uganda for a month. Um, so it was March of 2026. I worked with an organization there that had been looking for, they actually found out through Facebook about the energy psychology organization, went to them, and the executive director brought it up to a few people. And I was just in a position in my life where I could take time off and go to somewhere. I was the chair of that committee, the humanitarian committee, for 6 years. And I had always thought, I'd heard about people doing stuff in other countries, and I thought, wow, that would be really interesting. But I didn't feel like I could do it at that point in my life. And then this thing, which is how my life works, things just show up, and I'm like, yeah, you should do that. And that's kind of how I've had all kinds of really interesting experiences. So what I did is I came up with a curriculum, and I did teach when I was there college students and medical students, and in a day long. But what happened mostly, we went to either boarding schools, because the kids are mostly in boarding school if their parents can afford to educate them, because there's no free education, or we went to villages. And so the people there they already go to the villages and do work. They know the people in the villages, they know the chiefs. We sent them a letter with what I was proposing, and the chiefs who wanted it said yes, and we scheduled it. So you go out there and you're basically with a translator teaching, and I would teach like 5 exercises. And so I would teach them, we always taught them how to, the balanced hookup. We taught them, which you can find this on the website, the resources for resilience. We taught them comforting hug. The heart breathing is not on that website at this point. Hopefully it will be soon. 4 points tapping. We taught them trauma tapping technique, and then simplified havening. And I basically would help calm their nervous systems down through some of the energy medicine. And those were things that were so simple, I figured they could remember them. And then I would have them think about something they were anxious or what were you worried about or distressed about? And they would just think about it, and I'd ask them to notice how they knew in their bodies. So I was trying to get them to be a little more body focused. And then we would do the protocol. And what I figured out to do with them was to have, there was always someone in the village who could sing. So who would be a song leader? And I'd say, who wants to lead a song while we do this? And then we would tap, and I would be tapping and they would be singing. And it was beautiful, and everyone would sing with them. And I didn't know what they were saying, but they were singing. And as we did the tap, and then afterwards, or they were havening, which is another technique, they would haven. And then afterwards, I'd say, notice how you're feeling right now. No, go back to that worry. And people were like, it's completely gone. Oh my goodness. Or, there were other interesting things that happened because they're, in the villages, people, there's not a lot of food. Like they sometimes are getting 1 meal a day. And I remember one woman saying, I'm not hungry anymore. So think of what happens when you bring down that cortisol and you're not in survival mode as much, which may create more space to think about things like, they're doing subsistence farming. So it's a very different world. There's no indoor plumbing. It's such a different world than in the first world. But how can you help people? And people were so receptive. And then the question was, I would then have everybody repeat. I would get somebody who remembers this exercise. And then I'm like, if you don't remember, ask this person. They would lead with me. And the people who brought me there, I was also training them. So over time, they were leading everything. And I was just stepping back and sometimes going, don't forget this. They got trained in how to do it so that they can do the work. So I'm still in touch with them to help, coach them along in doing the work. But people were very, very receptive and responsive. So that was really very rewarding and exciting. And there were other things that were interesting. I mean, I think like going into schools, the schools are so different there. The kids, it's a very British system, and they're very well behaved, and they do exactly what they're supposed to do. And they would all welcome me where everyone said the same thing at the same time. And it was very different from going into a school in America. But you'd get a kid who really got it, and then I'd get that kid to demo again so that they could lead. But we even connected with some family members of some of the people I were training who were younger siblings in public schools. And now I've heard from them that they taught their friends, and that they're now, at the end of the day, after all the stress of class and homework before they go to bed, they're tapping together and feeling better. And I'm like, oh, then they'll bring that home. And they'll share it with their siblings and their parents. And this is like, you find something that works and you share it. So
I love it. Yeah. And this is how we change the world, right?
Yep, a little bit at a time. Right.
I love it.
Uganda is the size of the state of Oregon. So it's a small country in Africa. But, I have a friend who's doing work in Kenya. And one of my African contacts is going to train her and some of the people in Kenya over Zoom. So we're going to cross the border. So
love it.
Keep spreading.
Well, and it all started with actually work in Rwanda, right? With the genocide, like the orphan kids who had witnessed genocide. And there's some profound, there was a documentary made about it, right? With Lori Leiden's work called Project Light. There's a whole page if people want to find out more about this. Definitely the documentary is wonderful to watch. But also on the energy, the ASEP, Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, they have a website called energypsych.org, and under there's a whole page devoted to these humanitarian efforts, right? So
Right. So you can see the different efforts. My effort isn't on there yet because I'm recently back, but that will happen. Yes. So you can get ideas, you learn stuff, and then it's really easy to spread. My other favorite story is I was talking to a woman I know who was a second year kindergarten teacher in her 50s, right? So career change, it's a little overwhelming. The kids are, and she's working in a very low resource community. And the kids are coming to school, they're tired, they're stressed. And she was telling me about one kid, and I said, well, maybe you should do some tapping in your classroom. I said, I don't really have time to talk to you about it because I'm about to leave the country, but you could find it on the internet. And I thought, well, that was really not very nice of me. So then I see her after I've been back about a week, and she said, I have to tell you, I went on the website. I learned how to tap. I'm tapping in my classroom. The kids are calming down. I'm like, what? I was like, this is another example. Somebody who really needs something, and here's something really simple that helps. So,
yeah, it's actually pretty profound. I mean, I too started with EP way back in the day. I was still a grad student. In around 2000, I think was my first conference, and that's where my just whole universe blew open with all of these amazing techniques. And it's been really cool to watch over the years how even mainstream, I would say, tapping has become. There's celebrities using it. You see it sometimes in movies or TV shows. You're seeing people use it in schools, in prisons, in all these places that you never, and around the world, in third world countries, and all these places you never could have imagined has found its way. And so it's been really cool to watch that. And thank you for the work you have done to contributing, to getting that out in the world. So
yeah, it's very satisfying, and it's not as hard as you'd think. So,
yes. Now let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about your specific script now that you've developed, and we're going to do a little experiential thing here, which is always fun. So tell us more about how you developed this and what it is, everything.
So basically, like I said, I started thinking, okay, we have something that happens. We have some kind of distress that's not working for us, or something. Like, I'll give you an example. Someone in my group was avoiding getting really needed dental surgery. She was terrified, right? And the dentist is saying, like, I don't know what the long-term impact was going to be, but not good, right? And so it's the fear of the dental surgery. And so I asked her, what do you think that's related to? What's the root cause? What happened in your past that makes you so afraid of the dentist? Because I don't like having dental procedures, but I get them done because, you got to get them done or you're going to have a consequence, right? So then as we're talking about it, and I already know this about her, she has a pretty horrendous sexual abuse history, and sometimes sexual abuse involves the victim's mouth. And that was the case. And we worked on the connection between her fear of the dental surgery and what happened to her in her childhood. She made the appointment and she had the dental surgery. She'd been putting it off for months and was just immobilized around it. Another person in a group had a project that really, he was going to get in trouble if he didn't get it done, basically. And he was procrastinating. Well, what is that about? Well, when he was a kid, his father told him, you never finish anything and you're going to fail in life. And he was living through that belief. And when we cleared that and the connection, the next week he finished the project. So it's like, oh, it's not always like that. Sometimes it's like a little bit at a time. That, I've worked with people. I did a group for people who are having basically food noise, like eating, like really bad eating patterns, and constantly thinking about food and unconsciously eating. And then, for some of them, impacting their health. And we started really looking at what were the messages that they were getting from childhood. How did food comfort them? What was happening? when they, one of the people had a really emotionally abusive parent. And when that happened, they would go eat for comfort. And so whenever they felt unsafe or needing comfort, the food was the only option their body went to that was comforting. And over time, working on that, she started you like not turning to food right away and eating less and breaking that pattern. And so, sometimes it's a one shot deal. Often it's over time you're seeing patterns change. I've seen people, there's a person in my group who's got agoraphobia, and he's now actually going out and doing things. You know, he's like leaving the house and engaging in social activities and doing some volunteer work, and like, oh wow, that's it took a while, but that's huge. So there are lots of ways we could have gotten there, but this particular way was really effective. And group work is really wonderful in that the groups support each other. So there's a lot of support for the members in the group from each other, and they also see they're not the only one with issues, so it's not so shame based. And there's something that happens doing the work in a group that you get a lot more. There's just more energetic things happening, I've found. So, and it's also more cost effective for the members because I am not charging them my full fee for a single hour. So that can be really great. So it's, I've made it really accessible to people who don't have financial means to be in their own individual therapy. But I actually think it can be more powerful sometimes.
Oh yeah. I've done group work for years because I also do addiction work, and have worked in rehabs for forever. And I actually run an energy psychology group at a rehab here in the Bay Area. Rachel and I are both in the San Francisco Bay Area. And yeah, group work is incredibly powerful, and I think sometimes underutilized by therapists in private practice. If you're working in an organization like an agency, where that's more common, or in rehab that's very common to deliver the treatment that way, it is incredibly powerful, especially around trauma. Because there's so much shame involved and so much secrecy and everything, so that when people finally, it almost is normalized, like, oh, I'm not the only one, and oh, you feel the same way. Oh, well, no wonder we've been trying to numb ourselves, with these addictive behaviors.
Right.
Anyways, there's just a profound, and then exponential effect. The borrowing benefits, when we're all tapping together, I feel like it energetically magnifies, the effect that we get. So,
right.
anyways.
Yeah, so that stuff's really great. So that was sort of the kinds of things I've worked on, and having taught energy psychology and trying to explain to people how to deal with trauma. And I've always thought, like, you could deal with like the car accident someone was in, right? But I'm more interested in the impact of the car accident because that's connected. Like, we could clear the car accident, but I want to clear, I'm afraid to drive right now, or I'm not willing to get my dental work done, or I'm procrastinating, right? There's so much more power in clearing that connection. And I had a protocol, and I even taught a class at the energy psychology conference that was streamed about how to do that. And then within the next 2 years, I went to this next level. And then when I started teaching it, so many more people were willing to try to use it because they had this guideline. They didn't have to think for themselves, what am I going to say? Because it's really a skill. And some people, it's very hard and they give up to figure out what to tell the client to say. So what happened was, and people, I was doing classes where we would meet like 5 times. So they learned stuff, and then we would do consult afterwards. So they were using it. And they would say, oh, I did it, and the person had this positive outcome. And I'd be like, wow, this is so great, that how quickly they could get to that experience.
Well, so that's our cue to have that experience now. So could you guide us in a little mini exercise here?
Yes. So here's what we're going to do. You first have to identify what the issue is. So what are you working on, right? And that can be all kinds of things. So we've talked about procrastination. We've talked about, fear of driving. We can talk about eating when you're not hungry, or wanting to get high to avoid things. There are lots and lots of things that you could think about. And then you have to think about the root. So you pick what you're going to work on, and then you have to think about the root. What's the underlying cause of this pattern of eating when I'm not hungry? What's the underlying cause of me avoiding dental work or seeing the doctor? How many people don't want to go to doctor's appointments? Like there's all kinds of things. And that becomes the harder thing. I always ask people to think about, what is something that happened to you, was said to you, or you witnessed? So it could be that you were in a car accident, but it could be that someone said to you, you'll always be a failure. Or it could be something you witnessed, like it's not uncommon for people to say, well, I witnessed my parents verbally abusing my sibling or each other, and just the distress of seeing that can create an issue. So you're looking at, so you have to figure out for yourself what it was. And often people think about what I'm thinking about, and I'm like, no, this is an experience you had. It happened to you, you witnessed it, or it was said to you, which is kind of like happening to you, but happening might be, being in that car accident. And then the other thing you have to ask yourself is there anything that might block me from allowing myself to heal and release this? And that can be sometimes a little bit harder to figure out, but I ask people to just tune in. They might have a belief. If they can't figure it out, I might ask someone just looking over here for my list of common blocks to healing. Maybe it's not safe to heal and release it, or they don't deserve it, or they don't believe it's possible. Think as you're thinking about your issue and your root, does any of this resonate with you? I would lose my identity if I healed and released this. I wouldn't be a good person. I wouldn't be loyal to my family or friends. That's a really common one. How can I let go of this pattern of drinking when everyone in my family drinks? How can I stop having this pattern and get healthy? I would be leaving them behind. Or how could I choose a healthy relationship when my parents had such an unhealthy relationship? So those types of things. And maybe I don't give myself permission, or I don't have support from others. So you just notice, if I'm working with people, I'm going to be testing them with my pendulum and getting it, but you can certainly just intuit into it. I have people write down, here's my issue, here's my root, and if there's a block, here's my block. And then we go through the process. And so what I'm going to basically say the sentence, and then you say it back, and I will be tapping so you'll know where to tap. So you'll be able to come back and look at this video again. I'm also going to give you to my website. I have an audio with sound included where you can do this, and I give away the protocol. I'm like trying to spread healing. If you want to do the work with me, that's different. We can talk about that, but I want people, if this is useful, please take it out and use it. So I ask people, just take a moment, take a breath. Nice slow exhale. Tune into your issue. Notice in your body how it feels when you tune into that issue. And then tune into the root. What was happened to you, was said to you, or you witnessed? Noticing how that feels in your body. And then we start on the side of the hand. It's the pinky side, and we're just tapping right there and saying, even though I'm experiencing blank, which is your issue, even though I'm experiencing blank.
So even though I'm experiencing,
which is connected to blank. So you're going to say your root.
which is connected to.
I deeply and profoundly love and accept myself.
I deeply and profoundly love and accept myself.
I am enough.
I am enough.
And I invite myself to clear any blocks.
And I invite myself to clear any blocks.
To healing my mind.
To healing my mind,
Body.
spirit,
and energy field.
and energy field.
And we repeat that again. And even though I'm experiencing blank, say your issue.
And even though I'm experiencing,
which is connected to blank, say your root.
which is connected to.
I deeply and profoundly love and accept myself.
I deeply and profoundly love and accept myself.
I am enough.
I am enough.
And I invite myself to clear any blocks.
And I invite myself to clear any blocks.
To healing my mind.
To healing my mind,
Body.
spirit,
and energy field.
and energy field.
And take a breath. Slow exhale out your mouth. Tune into your issue and your root. And if you have a block, we're going to clear that. And so you're going to find your sore spots on your chest. So from your armpit, you go in about 4 inches, it'll be sore there. I cross my arms and I do outward circles. And this is the script I use. Different people use different scripts. So whatever your block is, say it's not safe. I'm going to have Adriana say it as a blank, but I'm going to just say, even though it's not safe, I deeply and profoundly love and accept myself.
I deeply and profoundly love and accept myself.
And we're going to do this 2 more times. Even though blank. So say whatever your block is. I deeply and profoundly love and accept myself.
I deeply and profoundly love and accept myself.
And one more time. Even though blank.
And even though
I deeply and profoundly love and accept myself.
I deeply and profoundly love and accept myself.
Take a deep breath. Slow exhale out your mouth. And again, tune into the issue and the root. And notice anything that's different when you tune in. And now we'll start tapping and just follow along. I release all spiritual.
I release all spiritual,
emotional,
and
energetic attachments. To blank. So say your issue.
To blank.
Which is connected to blank. Say your root.
Which is connected to.
I release all energy that's not mine.
I release all energy that's not mine.
And doesn't belong in my energy field. Related to blank. Say your issue.
Related to.
Which is connected to blank. Say your root.
Which is connected to.
And I send this energy to its proper place.
And I
place, say the root, I place blank back in time to when it occurred.
I place back in time to where it occurred.
I see a timeline of my life. And I just have people visualize this. We don't have to say anything. Just visualize your conception, my birth, my early childhood, going to school, into adolescence, early adulthood if you're that old, and then all the way to wherever now is. And I see the root happening on that timeline.
And I see the root happening on that timeline.
So just visualize where on that timeline. It may be a bunch of places or just one place where it happened. And I see when the root was not happening on the timeline of my life.
And I see that when the root was not happening on the timeline of my life.
And just visualize those other times in your life where that wasn't happening. Other things were happening. I eliminate the toxic energy.
I eliminate the toxic energy
Of those stressful past experiences.
of those stressful past experiences.
And if it was one, then of that stressful past experience. So just edit to make it work. I release the past.
I release the past.
I release negative expectations of the future repeating the past.
I release negative expectations of the future repeating the past.
I welcome back to my center.
I will come back to my center.
All the lost.
All the lost.
Cut off.
Cut off.
And unclaimed parts of myself.
And unclaimed parts of myself.
That's separated from me.
That separated from me.
When the root, say what the root is, happened.
When the root happened.
And I welcome back to my center.
And I welcome back to my center.
All the lost.
All the lost.
Cut off.
Cut off.
And unclaimed parts of myself.
And unclaimed parts of myself.
That have separated from me.
That have separated from me.
When I have been re-stimulated.
When I've been re-stimulated.
By situations that remind me.
By situations that remind me.
Consciously or unconsciously.
Consciously or unconsciously.
Of when the root happened, and say what the root is.
Of when the root happened.
And I have acted or perceived.
And I have acted or perceived.
As if it was happening in the present.
As if it was happening in the present.
I am in the present.
I am in the present.
Right here and now.
Right here and now.
The root is not happening.
The root is not happening.
I am safe.
I am safe.
Take a deep breath. And slow exhale. Again, tune in to the issue in the root. Notice what's different. And then notice the space you've made. Because, we clear stuff out, we have space. And nature abhors a vacuum, so we need to bring in positive. So that's the last step here. So you can think of a couple things you want to bring in. We never bring in negative things. Like we don't bring in, I'm not going to be tired. We bring in, I'm feeling rested or energized. We don't bring in not hopeful. We bring in seeing possibilities or hopeful. So or sometimes people say, I want to be less stuck. So we bring in, I'm feeling flow. I'm filled with creativity. Bring in what you want. And then there's 3 more sentences that we'll finish with. So we'll just start by tapping. So again, I just have people take a breath, be present, with exactly where you're at right now. If you have more issues that came up, you can go through the process again before you bring in positive, but we'll bring in the positive now with I restore the healthy flow of energy
I restore the healthy flow of energy
throughout my whole system
throughout my whole system
and create a balanced state of being
and create a balanced state of being
filled with, and say the positive things you're bringing in.
filled with,
I bring nurturing and grounding energy
I bring nurturing and grounding energy
to support me now
to support me now
with more and more, say what you're bringing in.
with more and more.
I connect my whole self
I connect my whole self
to this new way of being
to this new way of being
with grace and ease.
with grace and ease.
Deep breath in, slow exhale out your mouth, and just tuning in to notice what's present right now. And that's the protocol.
Aw, thank you so much, Rachel. That was beautiful. I feel much more at peace. So that's really great. Thank you
Good.
so much. If people want to find out more about you and your work, where should they go?
So you can go to my website, which is rachelmichaelsen.com. And if you want to go to the RIPP page, it's /RIPP, or it's under services. And you can find information and the script. And you can also download the recording. You could tap into it.
Wonderful. Yes. Thank you so much for being with us today, for sharing yourself, your gift, everything that you have put out there in the world. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you, audience, for tuning in. If you have found this information helpful, please do pass it along, share, like, subscribe, rate, review, all those things that will help get this podcast out there. And so this is Rachel and Dr. Adriana signing off. Looking forward to seeing you next time on Kaleidoscope of Possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. This has been Dr. Adriana Popescu. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and share with others. To find out more about me, my guests, and more, please visit my website at adrianapopescu.org. See you next time.